Good morning, everyone. This is Lisa Crockwell at the NLASW office. I wanted to welcome you all to our Continuing Professional Education Information Session for 2020. I'm joined here at the office by Lori Hewitt, who is our chair of the Registration Committee, and by Adrian Foley, our coordinator of communications and administration. And the three of us will be a little tag team in terms of the presentation this morning with the various parts. Also, Annette Johns, who's our Associate Director of Policy and Practice, is going to be our moderator this morning in terms of any questions that you may have. For those of you who've joined us in the past, you may know that we've been offering these sessions annually since, actually, I can't believe it, 2011, about the submission of CPE credits. So this is the 16th session, Lori, that we've facilitated on this topic. And we used to do it previously twice a year, but now, thanks to our partnership with the Canadian Association of Social Workers and this webinar technology, we do it once a year, just before registration opens, and then we upload it to our YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to check any content, or if you can't attend today, you can do that at another time. So throughout the presentation, there'll be the opportunity to send your questions to us, and we'll check periodically in with Annette to see what questions are there, and we'll also have some time at the end as well. So we'll get started. Okay. So this morning, we're going to take an hour and we're going to focus on two areas during our information session. We're going to do an overview of the continuing professional education policy and review the submission of CPE credits. If you look up there, you'll see two shots from our website. So that on the left is actually the full booklet on the CPE policy. That is on our website. You can consult it at any time. And so it just gives those of us who've been around for a while a bit of a refresher if something new has come up throughout the year, or you just kind of want to take a look at it. And it's also intended for anyone who's new to this process, to give you some information as well. And just to let you know that attending this morning, the 1 hour event is actually one CPE credit under the required category workshop, and Lori's going to get into required categories in just a minute. Always like to kind of preface our discussion this morning by why do we have this policy in the first place, and what's it all about? Well, those of us who've been around for a while know that we've had a policy on the submission of credits since the mid-1990s. And you also know this is consistent with all regulated professions, because we really truly do have a commitment to lifelong learning and remaining current and offering the highest quality of professional services. And we've just highlighted some of the pieces from the Code of Ethics that kind of really links into that. And you've probably also heard me say before that we have a very diligent registration committee, and so this policy is just reviewed on a regular basis, at least annually, but certainly always going through with any questions that people have to make sure it's clear that it reflects the practice. It's a big role of the registration committee, or one of their new roles. The other thing, in the last year or so, in September of 2018, we had new regulations which included mandatory continuing education. And on January the 1st, we've had new quality assurance provisions in our legislation, which also have CE requirements. This change is really taking it from a policy into the legislation. The good part about it is that because we've had it for so long, when the policy changed to the legislation, you won't see a difference in how things have operated. So there's no new requirements for RSWs in terms of continuing professional education. The other thing that we always like to remind people at the beginning when we just talk about CPE in general is, one of the things that I love about our profession is that it's wonderful, it's diverse. that being a registered social worker is more than the job that someone holds. And because of that, the continuing professional education policy is meant to provide a guideline as you evaluate the type of education that you complete. So if it furthers our professional development in learning that's related to social work, then it's CPE. So that can be from, regardless of what type of social work that you may engage in, because sometimes we think about it, oh, this is only about direct practice. It's not. It's equally about policy work and management and whatever type of social work that you may happen to practice. Because the policy recognizes the diversity and the opportunity for choice, that's the main reason why we won't accredit every single CPE event, because they're just too diverse. We'd never be able to do it, and it also gives people choice to be able to choose from different types of CPE. So as you can tell, there's an element of professional judgment that's built into this policy, even though it is quite a quantitative kind of policy. So you'll see that sometimes when we're responding to certain questions. That being said, for social workers who work in child, youth, and family services, because so many people do, we have accredited some of the modules and learning that's offered through the Department of Children, Seniors, and Social Development. We'll talk a little bit about that, but you can also, that's also on our website in terms of how many credit hours certain of those modules are. And that's just to make it easier, and we've been able to review it. Okay. The next thing, just by way of preface, is just that we do have on our website, and this is strictly a resource to hopefully be helpful, is a continuing professional education self-reflection tool. And we developed that about 3 or 4 years ago now, and it's been there since then. But it's really to be lined up with some of the things that we've just talked about, that CPE is about, ethics and our own personal development and professional development. So the tool is just intended to assist social workers to reflect on practice in a more, systematic way and choose the type of education which meets learning needs and styles. So it's divided into 5 areas. So it encourages us to think about our current area of competence. For example, I may be in one area of practice and I might want to move to another area of practice. So what are some of the things I need to think about? Related to that, what are our career plans and goals? So eventually, do I want to switch to a different type of social work? Do I want to move from policy practice to direct practice? And I need to be thinking about how do I kind of transition to that? Learning environments and activities. What kinds of learning environments do I best thrive in? So webinars and electronic delivery is so convenient. That has a place. Do I like that, or do I prefer face-to-face, and how do I get a combination of things? Professional knowledge. There's some core knowledge that, regardless of where we practice, that is core to our profession. So where am I in terms of that? And it kind of breaks down a little bit and talks about ethics and various skills. And under each of the 5 areas in that tool, there's a series of reflection questions. That also is available on our website, because we have a whole section on continuing professional education, which we'll be referring throughout the next hour. So you just get a sense of there is quite a breadth of things that are on our website that hopefully will be helpful. So to do a little transition to Lori, who's going to go through some of the mechanics of the CPE policy, we're going to give you our first poll, and that is, RSWs are required to complete a minimum of 40 CPE credits each registration year. How many must come from the required category? You can select your answer and submit, and we're just doing this as a little warm-up question to some other polling that we're going to do a little bit later on. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. 100%. See? Awesome. So there you go, Lori. That's a lovely little segue into your part and what we need to do.
It is. Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. So as Lisa said, the question you were just engaged in terms of the poll leads us into the section on the credit system. Sorry, well, thank you. Perfect. There we go. So as Lisa had said earlier, for those of you that are new to the policy, the next few slides will be a quick recap or an overview of the fundamentals of the credit system. And as you can see through the poll, there are 40 CPE credits required each registration year. And these 40 CPE credits are broken down into two categories. So the two categories listed, the first one is required, and the required section, at least 20 of the credits must be attained from participating in activities from the required category. And over the next few slides, we're going to break these down for you so you'll have some understanding of what fits under each category. So the required is one, the second one is elective. And the remaining balance of CPE credits can come from either the required or the elective, but the core 20 does come from the required category. And one credit is equivalent to 1 hour of learning. So in terms of when you're documenting your CPE credits, if you are engaged in an activity that's 1 hour, that equals 1 credit. And it also, you can claim credit to the nearest 0.5 credit or 30 minutes as well. So for example, if you're doing an activity that runs an hour and 40, an hour 45 minutes, you can count up to 2 credits for that activity. So we're going to take a closer look now at the two categories and look at the differences between the required and the elective. So required credits are related to the practice of social work specifically. So these would be transferable skills and learning. And often these are more structured learning activities that are specific to social work practice. And as Lisa had mentioned earlier, this doesn't entail only direct practice. It could involve policy as well as administration. It can involve research or community development, but it is structured learning and is specific to social work, but can be transferable across a range of practice settings. Whereas the elective category, these credits are more informal and they're more flexible as well and are more specific to one's position. So, for example, if you are attending an orientation session on steps, that would fall into an elective category. And we've had some confusion sometimes over the past where sometimes if you are required to do a certain training or a certain session by your employer, that you automatically put it under required. However, that's not the case. Again, it really depends on the type of learning that's involved. So oftentimes, like I said, if it's specific to your employment and not transferable across the profession, it would fall under elective. However, vice versa, something may be offered by your employer that could be transferable across different settings, and then you would include that under required.
And the CSSD, the CYFS modules are a really good example of that.
Absolutely. So we're going to break it down a little bit for you in terms of each of the categories. So there's 5 categories under the required as well as 5 under the elective. So, and you'll see as you go through and enter your CPE credits, these are all available to you, and there will be definitions as well. In addition to that, if you look at your CPE policy, descriptors of each of these categories can also be found beginning on page 3. So you can always go through that as well. So the first category would be courses. And this would be an academic course that enhances or relates to social work practice and has to be at least 36 hours, and it has to be completed at an accredited university. There are some activities that are named courses, but if it's not completed at an accredited university, it may be possible for you to claim these, but it would be under the workshop category. So some examples would be courses towards an MSW or a PhD, courses in related professions. So, for example, business, family therapy, philosophy, but it would have to meet that criteria of the accredited university, and again, at least 36 hours. So that could be captured under the courses. Conferences would be the second category, and conferences typically are events that run from 1 to 5 days, and typically there's a common theme which is explored throughout. Sometimes there's different presenters and discuss a variety of topics of relevance to the social work practice. And generally the goal of a conference is to increase knowledge of the specific thematic area. The third section would be, or the third category, is field instruction. And field instruction, there's, I guess, a couple of components to this area. So for credit for field instruction, they can be claimed under this category if you are the primary field instructor for a student enrolled in a social work degree program. As a field instructor, you would be the one having the primary responsibility for the education, evaluation, and the recommendation of the grade for the student. So you can claim up to 40 CPE credits the first time you engage in this. Every subsequent year, you can claim up to a maximum of 20 CPE. And again, this is if you are the primary evaluator. And the other piece of this to keep in mind is that regardless of the number of students that you may have, you can still claim up to a maximum of 40 credits for the first year, and then the maximum of 20 for each subsequent year, again, regardless of the students that you have. So that would be the piece under the field instruction. And again, specifically, if you want to take a look at that, it's outlined in your CPE policy. The other component is if it is a shared responsibility. So if you and another individual are sharing responsibility for the field instruction, then you can claim half of those credits. Okay, so it will be 20 for the first time and then 10 every subsequent year, depending on what your role is. The fourth category is workshops, and this category is where many of us get most of our required CPE credits. And workshops are an educational event really revolving around one topic and has a set learning objective. Typically, this can be either live or it can be online. So it doesn't really matter what the format is. It can be claimed under this category. And workshops really focus on increasing skills in one particular area of social work practice. And it can encompass different lengths of time. It could be offered intermittently, or it could be offered in a series. So some examples of that, sometimes, for example, like Lise had mentioned, this session here you can claim as 1 CPE credit under the workshop category. And there's often courses and offerings throughout the year that NLASW would offer as well that can be included under the workshop category as well. And finally, the fifth category is the professional education delivery. And this, social workers may claim up to a maximum of 10 credits annually for the preparation and delivery of conferences or of workshops. And the intent here is to promote the professional development of social workers and other professionals. The thing to keep in mind with this category as well is that CPE hours cannot be earned for subsequent presentations of the same material unless the material is modified. So an example of this would be time spent authoring a professional article for publication. That could be included in this category as well. If you're a guest lecturer or you do sessional instruction, you can also include that in terms of the professional education delivery. Okay, so that's the requires. The second category, the elective. Similarly, there are 5 categories underneath the elective. The first one being self-directed learning. And again, as mentioned prior, that the elective credits are oftentimes more flexible, and the education and learning is certainly more fluid and sometimes are easier to obtain. So again, the self-directed learning, fairly self-explanatory, and this can involve individual or group activities, so such as reading academic journals related to social work practice. Could also include course preparation for this, viewing any type of DVDs or anything that would increase your learning. And again, it can supplement other categories such as professional education delivery or preparation of articles. The second category is mentoring, and mentoring is a little bit different in terms of noticing the difference between this and the category field instruction or the required credits. So mentoring is the time spent mentoring social work and other students. And again, this differs from field instruction in that you as the mentor would not be the primary evaluator. Now, if you are a primary evaluator with students that are non-social work, then that would be included under this category as well. So some examples of mentoring would be some time spent, again, with social work students when someone else is a field instructor, or evaluating students in other disciplines. So that would include the mentoring. Those would be the primary differences in that category. Third one would be in-service training. And this category recognizes that learning that is part of one's job or one's position is still relevant, even if it's not transferable across the social work profession. So that would be captured under this category. So again, as mentioned earlier, some examples would be monthly statistics, doing workload measurement training, CRMS training, first aid, those types of examples you could include under this category. Committee work. This category is intended for people who are taking on committees and stretching their learning as a part of engaging in that committee work or committee practice. And so an example would be volunteers at the NLASW. So that would be included under committee work. The distinction with this category is that oftentimes in terms of our roles or positions, we may be required to do committee work. And that wouldn't necessarily be captured under this category if it's a condition of your employment. But again, something that's a bit distinctive outside of your expectations of your job, and again, that stretches the learning process. So again, NLASW committees, professional practice councils, ethics committees. Again, the piece to keep in mind is that it furthers the social work profession, or you're representing the social work profession in terms of that committee work. And finally, the public education delivery. So this is a preparation and delivery of public education events. And the preparation and delivery of these events are oftentimes related to problems or issues dealt with by the social work profession or topics related to the purpose and function of social work. And similarly, CPE hours cannot be earned for subsequent presentations of the same material. Again, unless the material is modified, again, you're looking at the increase of the learning that's done there. So time spent preparing an article for publication through mass media could be included in this category. Career day presentations, public lectures, providing pride training to the public. This could all be captured under the public education delivery component.
Okay. Thanks, Lori. What you see on your screen now is a snapshot of some of the webinars which are available for viewing on LASW's YouTube channel. And under the Embracing Excellence series, which is what we call our continuing education series, we offer as NLASW a vast amount of CPE which is obtainable by webinar, both live when it happens and afterwards for viewing. It's meant to be a good resource. We offer more required credits than are required under the policy. At any one time, there's always enough up there in terms of CPE. And the other second part of that is our partnership with the Canadian Association of Social Workers that also have similar presentations and webinars on their website at any particular time. A vast resource for people. And I'm going to put a plug in for 2 upcoming webinars and webcasts. One is the joint one that we do each year in partnership with the College of Registered Nurses of Newfoundland and Labrador and the Council of Licensed Practical Nurses, which is going to be on professional accountability. And I'm looking at Annette, if she wants to say anything else about that, you're more than welcome.
Yes, it's February 4th. From 2 to 4, and we have a stellar panel, so please join us for that webcast. If you're not available that day, of course, it will be recorded and up on our website as well on the slide there, our YouTube channel.
And that whole panel was in yesterday, and just really fascinating discussions around certain cases and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then the other one that we have is on January 24th, which is a webinar more in this format.
Yes. So on January 24th, we have Lori Pinhorn joining us, and she'll be presenting on acceptance and commitment therapy. The registration for that has been really high, so if you haven't registered, there's still time. You can register right up until the morning of the event, but we do have hundreds registered as of right now. So, yeah, very exciting to see all the CE that I just want to say that would not be possible without RSWs throughout the province who give so freely of their time and knowledge and expertise to do these webinars. So I always want to put a plug in for that to thank the members who do that, to promote all the continuing education. And if anyone's ever interested in getting some CPE yourself and facilitating an event, feel free to connect with me.
Right, because that's professional education delivery, as Lori had just done, and a great example of that. So yeah, and also I think the other piece is that each month, at the end of the month, we send the NLASW electronic update into your email that you've provided with us. There's rarely a month that goes by where there is not some CE planned and that there's information there. So that is a great resource as well. So that's going to lead to my next polling question. So you attended one of these NLASW, CSW webinars during the 2019 registration year. Would you claim this as a required credit or an elective credit? I'll give you a couple of minutes to submit your answers. That we offer required credit, viewed live or afterwards, because sometimes we have gotten that as a question. Okay. All right, I'm just following up from some of Lori's discussion. So you're required to attend a workplace hazard training by your employer. Would this be considered a required credit or an elective credit? And again, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Awesome. Okay, great. Oh, going to the next slide. Oh, got another polling question for you. This one is a little bit more tricky, but it's one that we do get, especially for people who've just graduated in the preceding year. So you completed your BSW in 2019. Can courses completed as part of your BSW degree be claimed as CPE credits? What would you think? And that's, I guess, the reason why we put that polling question in, and the reason why sometimes that's confusing. What we do as part of our education at the BSW level is a requirement for registration, so it's not continuing education. So anything, it's what we do post-BSW. So just to kind of answer that question for you. Of course, as you're doing your MSW and other related degrees, that's on top of the base requirement for registration. So the BSW is the prerequisite and foundation for our profession. And just one more thing, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, is just where on the website you can find all of the CPE resources. So when you go to the top menu, you'll see Continuing Professional Education. There you're going to find the CPE policy. You're going to find answers to frequently asked questions. And this is where we take what the questions really are that we get during the registration year and throughout, and we do put those in the document. The self-assessment tool that we've talked about a little previously, we put up examples of CPE that we know in the last year. So you can see kind of, even if your particular example is not there, you'll see something kind of related to it. And also, in addition to what we talked about in terms of NLASW and CASW, other sources of continuing professional education. For example, the Association of Social Work Boards has an approved continuing education program. Anything that you access through that program, the committee has already decided that too is required CPE under workshop, because that is all reviewed and accredited. So there's a number of links there. And so we do hope that is a great resource. And then the other piece to check out is the practice resource section. Lori talked about self-directed learning and those pieces, so all of that review of those practice resources would certainly fit with that as well. So that's just some things to sort of think about and some extra resources for you to consider. So we're going to come back to the CPE in a minute, but I'm going to ask Annette if there's any questions there now, or we'll put the questions in at the end, because now we're going to, in a minute, change it over to kind of talk a little bit more about online registration renewal and the system.
There are some questions.
Okay.
Sorry, is mentoring of new staff considered mentoring under that category?
No, because mentoring is related to social work students, so it wouldn't be related to social work staff.
Okay.
Yeah. So part of your professional kind of culture and stuff is to mentor new people coming into positions.
Okay, thank you. Someone else wants to know how often and when is the YouTube channel updated?
So the YouTube channel, always there. All those webinars are up there. It takes probably a few days after a presentation to upload. So, for example, today, within the week, that's uploaded. So because we kind of have to go through CASW. So very soon after any given presentation, you'll see it on the channel.
Yes. And sometimes you might want to refresh the page. So if you're going into that page frequently, you might press the refresh button up top just to make sure your server is getting the latest, to make sure you're getting all the updates. So I would suggest that too.
That's a good point.
And someone else, didn't get the date for the professional accountability session. So that's February 4th. And that's from 2 to 4 Island time in the afternoon. So that's a webcast, and the link will be available on the NLSW website the morning of that event, because you can go onto the link. You can't join the link until a half an hour before the session starts, but it will begin promptly at 2 o'clock. And that's a bit different from a webinar, because you'll actually see the presenters in the room. So you can attend by webcast, or you can attend on-site at the Health Sciences Centre main auditorium.
And again, an opportunity for questions sometimes at the end as well, or throughout, and people can respond in real time because you can see them unlike this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, right, that there'll be a little reminder in the update at the end of January too about that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. And just one more question. I think this was already answered, but is supervising a sociology student considered mentoring?
And I think we did.
Yeah.
Because it would be a student of another profession.
Yeah. And that was it for the questions.
Right, so keep coming. And at the end, we'll kind of check in with you again. And so now I'll turn it over to Adrian to talk through some of the mechanics of the online renewal system and registration renewal.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to provide an overview of the online renewal process. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the message that's going to be emailed to all members, indicating that renewal is open for 2020. So we anticipate that this message will be emailed out within the next day or so. So keep an eye to your inbox. So MyNLASW is the portal through which members will access online renewal as well as other features, which I'll review in the coming slides. It is easily accessible on NLASW's homepage. As you can see on your screen there now, there's a yellow MyNLASW button at the top of the website. And just to let you know, if you are accessing it through a mobile device, the portal is located under the top right drop-down menu. So once you click on the MyNLASW button, you're going to see a login screen, and you need both your registration number and password to log in. Now, if you do forget your registration number, you can easily click the Forgot My Registration Number located under the Login button. And what will happen then is you can type in your name and your registration number will appear. In terms of the password, we do provide an option for members to specify their own password, and you can do this by clicking on the Forgot My Password, also located under the Login button. So basically what will happen then is you'll be asked to supply an email, and if the email matches the one that's in NLASW's database, you'll receive a password reset message with a link to specify your own password. If the email doesn't match what's in our database, then you'll be asked to supply your date of birth, and then we'll use that to verify who you are, and we'll send your password by email. So once you log in, this is what you're going to see on your screen. The screenshot does show no status because this is obviously just a test case, but for any current members, the status is either going to show active or non-practicing until February 28, 2020. So to renew for 2020, you would select the first option, which is Renewal for Registration 2020. So at this time, I'm just going to review some of the other options that's on the login screen. Update my NLASW profile. So that gives you the option throughout the registration year if you change your name due to marriage, if you change employers, you can update that using the Update My Profile option. The Update My CPE, that's a feature that we really like to promote. It allows members basically to track their CPE throughout the registration year. So you can input the date of the event, the title, the category, so for example, the workshop, and then at time of renewal, it really streamlines the renewal process because basically there's a transfer button that's located on the CPE Step. You just click that button and it transfers over the numbers.
And I just have to say something as Adrian's doing that. So as we get ready to open registration renewal each year, we test case here in the office, right, to make sure everything is working. So yesterday when we did that, for the last couple of years, I use it, and just you hit the transfer button. It takes like minutes to do registration renewal because that's always been what some of the delay is, right? Just try to get together, get your CE together. And as a social worker, I do find it really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a good plug for the Update My CPE feature.
You, right? Just verified everything Adrian says.
And then the last piece on the login page is to retrieve my tax receipt. So this feature allows you to retrieve the 2019 tax receipts are there right now. So it's an easy way to get that information. So following login, there's a series of screens that basically takes you through a 9-step renewal process. And just to let you know, the next button that's at the end of each step, it takes you to the next page, but it also acts as a save feature. So say if you were on step 1 and you had to log out for some reason, when you log back in, you'll be right back on that step. So the first step, which is displaying on the screen right now, is update personal information. Most of the information is going to be pre-populated on this page because we would already have it on file. But under this step, for example, you can change your name if needed. by uploading current government issue photo ID that confirms the change. So I'm just going to follow the tabs now across the top of the screen. So the next tab would be the membership. So under membership, you're either going to select active registration or non-practicing membership. And just as a reminder, active registration is required to use the title social worker or to practice within the scope of the profession in this province. The CPE step is next. We do have a screenshot of that step, so I'll review that when we get to that. Most of the information is under the next couple of steps, like the education, work history, employment, that's pre-populated as well. But just to let you know, under education, if you did happen to complete your MSW during 2019, you can update it on this page, and you can choose to either upload proof as part of that step, or you can mail in the documentation. So following those steps, we have the question step. And really, I would just encourage you to take your time and to read through those questions carefully. And then following that, we have the review step. So that allows you to review or edit any information on any of the past steps. And there's also the option on this step if you want to print or save the renewal as a PDF. So that's an option that members asked for and that we inputted a couple of years ago. And then the final step is the payment step. So the payment options through the online system are either Visa or MasterCard. For those that are on payroll deduction during the 2019 calendar year, these payments have been pre-identified in the system. So for example, if we receive the full payment, then you won't need to input any payment on this step. Just to let you know, a common issue that often occurs on this step for those who are using Visa or MasterCard is the inputting of the expiry date incorrectly. The expiry date has to be entered as 2 digits for the month and the full 4 digits for the year. So I just wanted to highlight that.
And just as I'm turning over the slides, and Adrian talked about taking the time to read the questions carefully. So one of the questions is about adherence to the Code of Ethics. You'll see other ones about criminal records and those kinds of things. So going through those too quickly will result in us following up and saying, how come we're not adhering to the Code of Ethics this year? And we'll delay your registration. So just to reiterate that.
So what we're seeing now, as promised, is a screenshot of the CPE step. So there's basically 2 ways to enter your CPE on this page. You can either manually enter the numbers under the applicable categories. So for example, if it was 10 hours under workshops, you would enter 10 under that category. Or if you've been using the Update My CPE feature to keep track of your credits throughout the year, then you can use that yellow transfer button that you see on the screen, and then the numbers in each applicable category are going to transfer over to this page directly from the Update My CPE feature. So if you use either method, the module automatically calculates the total as well as your carryover, if applicable, for 2020. And the credits that you're carrying over from 2018, they'll also be pre-populated on that page if you do have any credits carried over from that time. And in terms of our annual audit, we audit randomly 5% of registered social workers each year. So members who have been randomly selected for an audit will be notified by email in advance, and you would submit your audit details on this page as well. And again, just another plug for the Update My CPE feature. As noted like several times throughout the presentation so far, we do encourage all members to use this feature throughout the registration year because it's a great way to streamline the annual renewal process. Just a quick reminder of the renewal deadline. The deadline to complete annual renewal is February 15th, 2020, midnight Island time. A $50 late fee will be applied to active renewals received after this date, and then active renewals received after the February 28th legislative deadline are subject to a $100 late fee. And I just wanted to highlight as well that although 2020 is a leap year, the legislative deadline of February 28th remains the same.
All right, thanks, Adrienne. It's a great overview of the system for sure. I'm going to go back to Annette and see if there are any other questions there from anybody.
Yeah, there's a couple questions here, so keep your questions coming in. Question is the YouTube channel on the NLSW website?
Yes, the YouTube channel is located under our continuing education menu. So under that menu, there's a sub-menu called Events, and under the Events page is where you'll find a link to our YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you. Someone else just put a plug in for the uploading the credits.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I would, just sent that in, so thanks for that. Someone else wants to know, how do they record CPE credits for writing a piece for Connecting Voices? So I can answer that question.
That's our Connecting Voices.
So we do welcome, articles for Connecting Voices 2 times a year, November 1st and May 1st for the winter and summer editions. But articles can come in at any time throughout the year. But members can claim CPE credits under the required category of professional education. And that category has a cap, as Laurie mentioned earlier, of up to 10 credits. And any additional research or articles that you might be reading in preparation of the article that can be claimed as elective credits.
Right, under self-directed
learning. So there's lots of ways to get credits for writing for your provincial social work newsletter. So as part of the editorial committee, we welcome those articles throughout the province. So, yeah.
And you'll be getting your next edition of Connecting Voices very soon.
Yes, you should be getting that in the mail anytime now. Okay. So someone else wants to know what should they do if under the registration category it's not showing an option for renewal?
Well, we haven't launched renewal as of yet. Basically, when you get the email, which I anticipate will be within the next day or so, to let you know that renewal is open, at that time you'll be able to log into My NLSW, and you'll see the option then to complete renewal for 2020.
Okay. Someone wants to know, what is the fee, the registration fee?
The annual renewal fee for active registration is $400.
Okay. Just to clarify, someone wants to know, is the registration number the same as the member's number?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you're not sure what your number is and you want to quickly look it up, you can go in on our website as well under the registry, and you just type in your name and your registration number will appear.
And does this webcast today count towards a CPE credit?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Under one for requires. Yeah. Under workshop.
Okay. This is more of a comment to it's a question, but also a comment in terms of when people watch the sessions on the NLSW YouTube channel, can these be claimed under required credit?
Yes. Yeah, and that's an important question because we do get that one often. And, so it's whether you attend live right now or whether you go in on the channel afterwards and watch it.
Yeah.
Because you're still getting the learning from the session, even though it's, a different format.
Yeah.
And that's the same if you're tapping into the CASW webinars on their site as well. They will be considered required under the workshop category. And that's all the questions that are there right now. I don't know if people want to quickly type something in, if you have a question that you want to have answered.
Well, we'll look at that, but I think hopefully what we've tried to do during this morning is just do a refresher and an overview to make this renewal process as streamlined and straightforward as possible, And in terms of continuing professional education, it's been an important part for us at NLASW to support that through the provision of the Embracing Excellence series and having things available for people to supplement the other pieces that you may get from other continuing education you may get from other sources, like your employer or other things that you attend. Also, I think it's important for just to also say in terms of the practice resources are meant to support your practice. And we do have a professional development fund and a Canadian Association of Social Workers Scholarship Fund to assist with the financial part of attending things which meet the CE policy, which is outside of what we provide. Because as you know, we provide all of the webinars and things, as does CSW, free of charge. So it's a way to support practice.
Okay, we do have one additional question. In terms of what information is required if you're selected for an audit.
Okay, so as I mentioned, you will be notified in advance by email, so that does give you time to prepare the information. If you've been using the Update My CPE tracker, then your audit information is basically there. So what you need to submit would be, you would break down your numbers. So if it was 10 hours under workshops, you would break that down in terms of the date of each workshop, the title, and how many hours.
And I think it was last year myself and Annette were audited as well. Yeah. So we've used the CPE tracker for that too. Yeah. And again, it does make it easier.
Yeah. And it's only a second after you finish your session, log in, put the information in. Okay, this is a good question. If there is nothing, so if someone watches the YouTube video and there's nothing to print off in terms of certificate of attendance, how would you prove your CPE hours?
Do you want me to take that one? Or, that's a good question. We don't ask for proof of attendance, and I know that does vary by regulatory body for sure. Most do. If you record it yourself and and again having it both on the update your CPE or you record it as hours, then we've considered that you've attended it.
Okay, and another question just came in. Would being an OHS committee member count under committee elective credit?
We have had that question before. I'm trying. Yes. Really good. This one. Remember at the beginning we were talking about the diversity of committees and how that all kind of the works and how there's some. We're always kind of use professional judgment. That's why we're just going to look up. Do we have that one in the list of examples?
While they're looking that up, I just want to put a piece of information into under our CPE continuing education section on the website. We also have an events calendar where we post events from other things that are happening. So if someone sends us a workshop, for example, that the CMAJ might be offering, we'll upload that to our events calendar. So at any point you can go into our website and view our sessions, but also any upcoming sessions that we post that we get from other groups as well. People can tap into that.
And around the occupational health and safety question around the committee, yeah, I think it's under elective credits under committee. I remember we had a question one time about presenting and those kinds of things, which is different to an OHS. So that's where I was getting a little confused. But as a committee, because it's kind of outside. Now, if you're an occupational health and safety officer and that is your job, then being on a committee, maybe not. Again, it goes back to that judgment. Are you stretching your learning in this particular situation by being on that committee?
And I just have 3 questions come in that are of the same type question. In terms of, is the hours for claiming the 12 months in the calendar year? And someone else asked then if they could claim for January and February of each year. So very similar question in terms of claiming credit.
And that question normally comes up every year. So because the registration year runs from March 1st to February the 28th, there are those 2 months. So in January and February, if you don't claim it upon registration year, you can always hold them and claim them the following registration year. So oftentimes I know there are a number of offerings in January and February. So depending on when you do submit, you can either submit them that year or you can hold them and submit them the following year.
Correct. Yep.
And the tracker, though, does from March to February?
Yeah, because with the online system, obviously there's a lot of formulas going on behind the scenes, and it's all based on the registration year. But the tracker does allow you to input the January, February. It's just when you transfer it over to the CPE Step, you'll manually have to put those credit hours in.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on that. Because I registered yesterday, and I noticed, right, all my credits didn't come over, so I just had to go back in and manually enter January and February sessions that I did. All right. We did have one more question coming in. I think we still got a little bit of time. Would training for new provincial programs, for example, Home First, Services for Children with Disabilities, be considered required or elective?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, sorry. Would training for new provincial programs, for example, Home First, Services for Children with Disabilities, be considered required or elective?
Training for new programs. That would be required. Well, that goes back to Lori's point about is it transferable across the profession. If it's particular to the program itself, and you wouldn't kind of use that knowledge to another program, then that would be in-service training. If it's knowledge that's transferable, and a really good example sometimes on new programs or sometimes like new legislation, someone goes in and gets training on the new Child and Youth Services Act. Even though you don't work in child youth services, it transfers across many fields.
And that's it for the question.
Well, that's perfect timing because we're just at 10 o'clock. I would like to just say thank you to everyone for attending this morning and just being more clear on the whole process, and thanks for your interest in that. If you have any follow-up questions, certainly we're always happy to answer them. I'd also like to thank our team because, as you can tell, it's a joint effort, Lori and Adrian and Annette, and then, of course, the work of the registration committee each year to kind of streamline behind the scenes. So we'll look forward to another registration year. Hard to believe it's 2020. Thanks for everybody for attending.